Kirkpatrick. I'm in Northern California, an organizational change consultant, speaker, author of the new book, The No Limits Enterprise, Organizational Self-Management in the New World of Work. And I work with companies all across the USA and all around the world, searching for better ways of working. Well, here's a question. Is it possible to manage great complexity with great simplicity? Can we make the complex simple and improve the way we manage organizations and navigate those organizations as human beings? Let's take a look at the current landscape of organizations. Right now, the Management Lab tells us that in the US alone, we waste $3 trillion a year on excess bureaucracy. This is the cost of wasted levels of management, bureaucratic slow decision-making, and all the other excessive paperwork and steps that go into bureaucracy. $3 trillion per year. Extrapolated worldwide, that number is astronomical. And we're not just wasting money, we're wasting people's lives because we're compelling people to do work that doesn't matter. In addition to the cost of bureaucracy, we have massive disengagement. Gallup and other organizations tell us that 2/3 to 3/4 of workers are disengaged. They're just putting in their time. They're not passionate about what they're doing. 20% or so of those workers are actively disengaged. They're actively undermining their own workplaces through all the dysfunctions of work: absenteeism, drug use, harassment, bullying, and all the other dysfunctions of the modern workplace. Gallup tells us that this active disengagement costs about $500 billion a year in the US alone. Imagine what that number would be extrapolated around the world. We also use very dehumanizing language in the workplace. The very term human resources was designed to dehumanize people and replace the idea of personnel offices, for example. People are not resources, they're human beings. We talk about direct reports as if people are file folders. We talk about headcount as if people don't have bodies. We talk about man hours as if women don't exist. The language of HR itself is utterly dehumanizing. In addition to this, organizations are creating massive anxiety. IBM performed a study capitalizing on complexity, and they found that most executives doubted their own ability to manage complexity, causing massive anxiety. And we don't need people paralyzed by their inability to manage the future. And the future is coming at us at an accelerating rate with blockchain, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, nanotechnology, robotics, genetic engineering. Now we have 4D printing. We've already transcended 3D printing and moved into 4D printing. Is the world ready for this accelerating pace of technology? And the very idea of bureaucracy itself is self-contradictory. If you have a pyramid, a traditional hierarchy, where people are competing for a small number of leadership spots at the top of a pyramid, well, the question is, if people are trying to please their boss, who's spending time pleasing the customer? The idea of bureaucracy itself is inherently contradictory. So is there a solution to this management purgatory in which we find ourselves? Can we manage great complexity with great simplicity? I believe the answer is unequivocally yes. This is Dee Hock. Dee Hock is the founder of Visa, the credit card company. And Dee Hock famously said, that complex rules cause simple, stupid behavior, but that simple rules allow for complex, intelligent behavior. Can we shift on the spectrum to create simple rules that allow organizations to navigate with grace and speed in complex environments? This is an overhead picture of a roundabout. It's actually 7 roundabouts in one, and this happens to be located in Swindon, England. And this roundabout has been around for 60 years. And you really only need 2 rules to navigate any roundabout anywhere in the world. The first rule is you yield to the cars that are already in the roundabout. And the second rule is that you position your car in the correct lane for your exit. As long as you understand those 2 rules, you can navigate every roundabout anywhere, including the roundabout of 7 roundabouts in Swindon, England. Furthermore, roundabouts are safer. They have far greater safety records than traditional intersections based on those 2 simple rules. Far less pollution because people aren't starting and stopping at the intersection, and far greater productivity, anywhere from 15 to 80% greater throughput because cars are moving continuously in the roundabout. Those are good things to pursue. Complexity through simplicity. Can we apply this logic to business? I believe that we can. My story is that I grew up in a company in Northern California here. In 1990, I joined this company. It was founded by a young entrepreneur named Chris Rupert. And his vision was to create a state-of-the-art food processing company that was very high-tech. And so I joined his startup team in February of 1990. We were working out of a tiny little farmhouse on a dusty canal bank here in Northern California. And we had a core team of about 24 people. I was the financial controller. Most of my colleagues were technicians, electromechanics, automation specialists, quality specialists, and the like. And we were working out of this tiny farmhouse, developing our project. And the name of the project was Morningstar. And one day, our founder came into the farmhouse and said, I'd like to call a meeting of colleagues and talk about how we can organize this company so that we can set up governance that works. And we all said, sure. So we met with him at night in a double-wide construction trailer on the job site nearby. And we sat around in a circle on steel folding chairs, and Chris passed out a document called the Morningstar Team Principles. And the principles boiled down to 2 things. The first principle was that people should not use force or coercion against other people. And if you think about that principle, it's the foundation of all law. Everywhere in the world, every law against assault and battery, theft, burglary, kidnapping, murder, and all the rest is founded on the principle that people shouldn't use force against other people. The second principle was that people should keep the commitments they make to others. And this is also a foundation of law everywhere, especially civil and contract law, which would mean nothing if people didn't do what they said they were going to do. And so we discussed and debated these principles for a couple of hours. At the end of the evening, we walked out of the trailer and adopted those principles. And at that very moment, we became a self-managed enterprise. So we had a lot of work to do. This was actually in March of 1990 when we had this meeting. And we had a lot of work to do. We had to construct a factory. We had hundreds of construction workers on the job site 24 hours a day, constructing, fabricating, welding. We had thousands of acres, hectares of tomatoes coming up out of the ground, up and down the state of California. We had vital equipment arriving on ocean cargo freighters from Parma, Italy, in the Atlantic Ocean, waiting to go through the Panama Canal. And we had to hire hundreds of people to operate the factory and drive the trucks to make the project work. And finally, on July 16th of 1990, we turned on the factory. And we produced 90 million pounds, or about 45 million kilograms of industrial tomato concentrate for the world market. And we changed the cost structure of our industry virtually overnight. And we did it all without a single human boss or supervisor or manager or vice president or title of any kind. All based on the power of organizational self-management rooted in two simple principles: don't use force and keep commitments. The company went on to grow. We built another factory and then another factory. We expanded operations up and down the supply chain toward customers in remote warehouses across North America and toward the product in terms of farming and harvesting and transplanting and trucking. And in the course of that growth, we became the largest tomato processor in the world. And I believe everyone in North America has eaten our product that goes into everything you can think of in the grocery store, from ketchup to salsa, pizza sauce, barbecue sauce, spaghetti sauce, and thousands of other products. And millions more have eaten our product around the world because we export globally. Now a billion-dollar company with thousands of employees. We call them colleagues, professional colleagues. And we have never deviated from our two core principles: don't use force and keep commitments. How can this possibly work? Well, it was very interesting. In 2010, we had business author Gary Hamel come out and pay us a visit, and he wrote an article about us for the Harvard Business Review, which described us on the cover as the world's most creatively managed company. And in the article, Gary talks about some of the tools and processes and practices in which we operate. And people want to know, how can this possibly work? And what I tell people is that it starts with principle. We have the two core principles that I described. We think these are the most important principles of human interaction. We think these principles are to human beings what gravity is to physics. And we know this because if you imagine a world where everyone abandoned the use of force, we wouldn't need armies or navies or police or locks on our doors. And of course, that's not realistic. We understand that's not reality, but that's not really the point. The point is, the closer we get to that ideal state inside an organization or not, the better off we are as human beings, and the more space we open up for human happiness, harmony, prosperity, teamwork, and all the good things of life. Imagine a world where every single person kept their commitments. Everyone did what they said they were going to do. What an amazing world that would be to live in. And again, we know that's not realistic. We understand that's not reality, but that's not really the point. The point is, the closer we get to that ideal state, the better off we are as human beings, and the more space we open up for human happiness, harmony, prosperity, and all the good things of life. And by the way, keeping commitments has quantifiable economic and financial value. People that keep commitments are worth more in the marketplace for talent than people that don't. And that's commercially demonstrable. These are very, very important principles. The most important principles of human interaction are really the anchors, the anchoring principles of Morningstar that have allowed us to manage great complexity and growth with great simplicity. We ask people to give up power. So in self-management, there is no command authority. No one can walk up to another person and say, start doing X and stop doing Y. Everything is accomplished through request and response. People do have an obligation to respond to requests, but they are requests, not commands. And we find that engagement is much higher when people aren't subjected to arbitrary force and coercion through command authority. We see human beings as the ultimate reality. Every business that's ever existed or ever will exist is there to serve one of 8 or more human needs. When you get past food, clothing, and shelter, there's communication, transportation, entertainment, personal security, and healthcare. That's it. And so if you understand that business is all about people, all about serving human needs, it's about the people always. People are the ultimate reality. Teams are just concepts. Business units are just concepts. Companies are merely concepts. Only human beings are real, because human beings can take actions and human beings can make decisions. Human beings are the ultimate reality. It's about managing great complexity with great simplicity. As long as people don't use force and keep commitments and perform their roles that they've agreed to perform competently, they can thrive in the environment and culture of Morningstar. We slash what Gary Hamel called the management tax because we have a giant network. We don't have a bureaucracy. And this is what our network looks like. This is a frame from a time-lapse video of our first factory. I believe I'm the blue dot in the upper section. And this is a frame because it's in constant motion. It's constantly moving as people renegotiate their roles and responsibilities and enter and exit the ecosystem. A few years later, we took a digitized picture of our entire network based on agreements by and between peers. And this is what that picture looks like. People are connected to each other by agreement, not by force, not by hierarchy and bureaucracy, not by command and control, but by agreements. So what do these agreements look like? Well, after we built the second Morningstar factory, we realized that we had to have some kind of understandings between colleagues that would allow us to scale beyond an initial small factory with a small number of professionals all working in the same location. And so we developed an instrument called a colleague letter of understanding. And that colleague letter of understanding is really about the who, what, why, when, where, and how of work. We start with a personal mission statement. Why are you here? Why do you come to work every day? What does excellence look like in your role? And how does what you do support the mission, vision, values, and principles of the enterprise? Then we identify one's services, the scope of decision-making authority, the connections with whom people have in the enterprise, to whom they owe the highest level of accountability and responsibility, and how are they going to measure their results? So these agreements form the backbone of connectivity by and between colleagues that allow us to create a giant network as opposed to a vertical hierarchy and bureaucracy. And by the way, we think that the network approach is a stronger, better approach. It kind of looks like a spider web. And spider silk is 5 times stronger than steel by weight. The network approach is resilient, robust, strong. If a few people decide to leave the enterprise, it does not matter, because people remaining in the enterprise will quickly reallocate roles and responsibilities to cover any gaps. Self-management is an effective, scalable, highly productive way to work that slashes the management tax, and that's been our experience. So we have real accountability, we have real leadership. In self-management, there is no command authority, there's natural leadership. The mantle of leadership is earned by trust, respect, and caring and communication. It's not something that is conveyed by a title or position power. Natural leadership is stronger, better leadership. Command authority causes leadership muscles to atrophy and grow weaker. We believe that in our network, we have natural leaders with strong leadership skills that get the job done. So we replace bureaucracy with contracts. These contracts, these colleague letters of understanding, are a complete replacement for bureaucracy. And they've allowed us to grow and scale for 32 years, effectively managing great complexity with great simplicity. Unless you think that Morningstar is the only strange company in the world working in a unique way, I can assure you there are other companies that are pursuing the same or similar paths. In fact, there are many companies. Jaipur Rugs, for example, in Jaipur, India, was founded by Nankishore Chaudhary, and he has 40,000 carpet weavers in small villages throughout India. They come from primarily the untouchable class, and they are self-managed. They are creating their own designs. They are delivering keynote speeches. They are traveling to award ceremonies in Europe and accepting awards for their great designs. And he has elevated the lives of tens of thousands of poor carpet weavers throughout India through the power of self-management, giving them a voice and taking out the middleman and changing people's lives forever. So there are examples around the world, great examples. And one of the greatest examples comes from nature. So this is the beautiful double helix of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. The 2 strands of DNA are made of the simplest substances on Earth, phosphate and sugar. And yet between those 2 strands of the double helix, they contain all information needed to create every living thing on planet Earth. It's possible to flourish great complexity from great simplicity. And the best examples are found in nature. So with that, I thank you for your time. I hope you have a great conference. It's been my pleasure to participate here. And it's possible to manage great organizational complexity with great simplicity. Thank you.